Remote deposit capture. This is a fairly new development meant to help you with your check deposit activity. This takes advantage of some of the Check 21 developments as well as some of the developments that have occurred in the ACH arena. What works and what do you need to work around?
What is remote deposit capture?
Well, remote deposit capture is a pretty recent development and a term that's starting to be used generally by some banks. Remote deposit capture takes advantage of some of the Check 21 and some of the ACH conversion capabilities that have become available fairly recently. What this does is it allows you to, with a piece of equipment, to scan a check. Let's say it's at a remote facility that received a check. That check would be scanned. That check would be transmitted to your financial institution. And in some cases, the bank would make the decision whether to use Check 21 to clear that item or to use one of the ACH check conversion utilities. This is a very interesting feature in that it allows the remote facility to basically scan the check and then destroy the check without having to prepare deposit tickets or to bring those checks to a local financial institution.
How does remote deposit capture relate or is different from Lockbox?
Well, a lockbox is typically where an organization sends out to their customers an address to ship their checks to. When they make their payments, they send them into a lockbox. As they send those payments into the lockbox, the bank handles the depositing of the check and then sending the payment information back to the customer. How remote deposit capture works is if the check falls into the hands of the company first, perhaps at a regional office or a local site, that check can be scanned at that point and then sent in without having to make that deposit. How they can work together, as we've started this process with remote deposit capture, most of the banks who've started that have not integrated those files. And here's where that can be an issue and something you need to consider. Hey, this is important. Listen up. If you have a lockbox and you're receiving a feed to your accounts receivable system with all the details of who paid you for auto posting, in other words, clearing off those accounts receivable items directly, that is a very efficient process. As banks have added remote deposit capture, they haven't necessarily linked those two systems together. So for example, if only a few stray checks come into a regional office and they use remote deposit capture, now you have two completely separate processes. Sometimes you can receive a file from the bank that shows the remote deposit captured items, and then you'd receive a second feed from the lockbox system. Those are not merged together. They represent an opportunity for banks to provide services that more accurately reflect the needs of their organizations, of their customer organizations.
Since this is a fairly new service, how do I know this service is right for our company?
Well, how do you know that any service is right for your company is a general and good question. How do you know that remote deposit capture is right for your organization? I think a couple key things to consider is what is your payment mix? What's going on in the process? And would this provide an opportunity for you to streamline your process and to provide appropriate controls? So thinking through some of those as you look at your electronification strategy or your movement to a more efficient collection process will help determine which services are appropriate and whether remote deposit capture would be appropriate for your organization. This needs to be part of a thoughtful approach, of course.
What are the key points of remote deposit capture?
That it's new, that it provides some interesting capabilities that are going to be right for some organizations now and will be appropriate for other organizations shortly. You should ask your banker about their capabilities if this fits into your overall collection or electronification plan.